the next Ridley Scott film, which is supposed to be with the M's, is The Martian. I saw that this came out shortly after I started working at the theater, and I freaking love this movie. I love the 3D. This movie was shot in 3D. You can tell that he really went all out to make this a very exciting 3D movie. Or Ridley Scott, I mean, lots of cool landscape shots, hyper stereo shots. Planets feel very round when you're out in space. You don't feel flat. Cool shots of the Hermes flying right out of the screen. Really awesome, really deep 3D. It just looks fantastic. This is almost top 10. There are other 3D movies that I probably would recommend, but this is still good. I mean, because when I say that, it sounds like it's bad 3D, but no, this 3D in this movie is fantastic. 100% pick this up if you don't have it and you have a 3D TV. Really, really, really. This is one of the earliest 3D Blu-rays I got. It's a spin-off of the Shrek series. So they decided to do this instead of Shrek 5. And we got Puss in Boots. Puss in Boots stars Antonio Banderas, obviously another DreamWorks film. 3D in this movie is really, really fun, especially the 3D with the beanstalk when it's growing. This was actually mentioned in that book that I've been talking about. He brings this up. Specifically the beanstalk scene, and I know I'm scratching my ear like a degenerate. And I would recommend picking this up if you have other DreamWorks films and you want a nice, fun 3D animated movie to add to your collection. This is it, man. It's genuinely good. I know a lot of spin-offs are kind of crap, but that one is really good. Now here's another one that's somewhat recent. And this is a 2D film, and it's kind of a shame. And that is Rango. Rango is a great Western. I know I said I didn't watch a lot of Westerns, but then this is a Western. This is genuinely a phenomenal movie. The photorealism and the way that they filmed it was fantastic. It's really interesting to look at the behind the scenes. But it is a crying shame that this film was not done in 3D. There's like a lot of shots that would be really cool to see in 3D. And they didn't do it. And it's because this came out during the height of the 3D craze too, back in the early 2010s. I don't remember specifically when 2011. So this would have been like right there in production, or when the 3D craze was going on. And I remember when this movie came out, there was a movie reviewer that they don't usually recommend 3D, but they were like, it's a shame that this movie didn't get a 3D release because it would have looked really amazing. But that it is what it is. Rango, it's really good though. You should check it out. Anyway, it's not just good animated movie; it's a good movie in general. This was another one that I was on the fence on, but I'm glad I was convinced to get it. Ended up being a really great 3D movie, and that is Rio 3D. I had reservations. I hadn't seen this movie in quite a while. I hadn't seen it in 3D ever, but I was kind of like, I don't really like Rio. It's whatever. And I saw it again. We picked it up in 3D, and I saw it, and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. This movie has some of the best 3D that I have seen in a long while, even though it came out a while. This also has D-Box motion code. D-Box is a lot more all over the place than I thought. The 3D in this movie is great because sometimes it's really in your face. It's really deep. They have a lot of pop-out scenes. They really set up the shots with 3D in mind with the jungles, and there's a lot of subtle 3D too. The toucan right here, believe he was voiced by George Lopez. There's a lot of shots with the characters sitting a little bit behind the frame or the window, the screen, and his nose, his beak will go in and out as he talks, and it's a really cool effect. This is one of the best 3D movies I've ever seen, and while I wouldn't put it on a top 10 list, it is definitely worth checking out if you have a 3D TV. We're almost there. Next, we're looking at another DreamWorks film. I have a lot of DreamWorks movies. They're really good at 3D movies. What can I say? DreamWorks Rise of the Guardians, and this is another really fun 3D movie. And you can tell that they were having a lot of fun with it. It's not one of the most memorable DreamWorks movies as far as the content of it itself goes. But if you gotta, if you have kids over and it's a holiday and you're like, gee, I don't know, and I don't really have a holiday movie, just put this on. Any holiday will do, and it'll work out just fine. But this is also legit. It's a good movie. It just ended up getting forgotten. And this is actually based off a book series with some pretty good lore behind it. I looked up the Rise of the Guardians lore, and you'll see this movie in a whole different way, especially the antagonist of the film. After you know about his lore, he's a pretty tragic villain, all in all, but really good 3D. This is one I don't know if I watched the whole thing. I might have just gotten bored. And it might have just been really cheap, and that's why I picked it up, and I wanted to get some horror films, and I knew this one was shot in 3D. We got Saw 3D, the final chapter, unrated. This was the movie that came out. This was the last Saw that came out, outside of Jigsaw, and then whatever other Saw movie they're having is a spinoff. I think the disc is cool, though. It's a blade. A lot of discs are, like, really boring now. Like, oh my gosh. Well, ignore the Chuck E. Cheese tokens. Like, it's just like a silver disc. They don't really have disc art like they used to. But the Saw disc art looks like... Anyway, House of 3D. 3D's okay. I mean, they filmed it in 3D, but this is another one that just goes to show just because something's filmed in 3D doesn't mean it necessarily is going to be great. They try to do stuff coming out of the screen. It just doesn't work all that well. And you're not missing much if you skip out on this. It's really not that great. This is another 2D film that I've had for a while. This is a movie that I didn't see in theaters, but I was mildly interested in, and I'm glad I picked it up. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. Based off of the book, it's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Really great, really good soundtrack. It's a beautifully shot film. Lots of fun sequences in there. Great little mystery road trip story once again. And you really do come to care for Ben Stiller's character, Walter Mitty. It's just great. If you want a feel-good movie with a really cool soundtrack and lots of interesting locations, then I would say check this one out. This movie would actually have been a really cool 3D movie. There's a lot of fun sequences and a lot of very beautiful locations that would have looked great in 3D. Here we go. We're going to do a twofer on this one. And the twofer is the Shrek movies. I remember, I didn't even realize this got a 3D re-release. And when I found that out, dude, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get Shrek in 3D. It's going to be so cool. And the 3D is kind of the movie's great. The 3D is kind of lackluster. I'd say it's slightly above Monsters Incorporated and Finding Nemo's re-release. I have heard that they re-released all of the Shrek films. I have heard Shrek 2 and Shrek 3 do look better in 3D. I'm considering just getting there is a pack you can get of all 4 Shrek movies in 3D. But I only really cared about this one and this one. My opinion on the original Shrek has only gone up over time. I used to not really care about it that much, but as I gotten older, I really appreciated it. The soundtrack to this movie is great. Not just the actual song, lyrical music, but the orchestrated soundtrack is really good as well. This is a movie you should check out whether or not you have it in 3D, but the 3D is neat. It's neat to have it in 3D. And Shrek Forever After, which my opinion has kind of gone down on it a little bit, over the subsequent viewings. They forego a lot of orchestrated soundtrack for lyrical songs that don't even really feel like they belong in the sequence that they're put in. You can definitely tell by this point they were getting a little bit worn out on the Shrek series. I know, I keep spitting up spit. Which is probably why they went with the Puss in Boots spinoff instead of doing a Shrek 5, which I heard they are doing a Shrek 5 now that Comcast owns DreamWorks Animation. But this is good. I think this is better. This is definitely better than Shrek the Third. I'll have to give Shrek 2 another shot. I didn't particularly like that Shrek 2 more than this one, but the 3D in this movie, really, really good, really well done. It's just a shame that the movie itself couldn't have been a little bit better. But there's a lot of great 3D stuff in the movie. This is another twofer, usually a threefer, and there's a whole bunch of these movies. But we're talking about Spiderman. We're talking about the Tobey Maguire, the original Spider-Man films. I know this is a trilogy. Don't really care much for the third movie. No, it's not as horrible as people say, but these first two movies are undisputed. For a lot of people, these two movies are perfect, and they are still the best Spider-Man films. I'd say Spider-Man 2 is probably one of the best, if not the best, Spider-Man films they've ever made. And fun fact, that Spider-Man 4, they were going to do a Spider-Man 4, but it got canceled. But that movie was going to be shot in 3D. And I think a Sam Raimi film in 3D would be a really cool thing to see. Unfortunately, the studio kept messing with this movie, and he just gave up and said he wasn't doing it anymore. And after that, Tobey Maguire left. But Spider-Man 1 and 2, absolute classics. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin and Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus are great. James Franco also in these films really good. I like Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. He makes a really convincing nerdy guy. Anyway, I won't talk about those. I don't have the Amazing Spider-Man films. I heard the 3D and those are really good. I just don't really care about those enough to pick those up. I have criteria for picking up a new movie, and one, the 3D has to be good. It has to be worthwhile. And two, it's going to be something that I'm going to want to watch. I don't want to, a good example is Ghostbusters 2016. Fantastic 3D. I saw it in IMAX 3D. I gave it the benefit of a doubt, and I saw a lot of articles talking about how good the 3D was. And I saw it, and and I had seen from the trailers that the 3D looked nice. And the 3D in that movie is really well done. Unfortunately, the movie is crap, and I probably wouldn't watch it outside of the one time I bought it to see it in 3D. But this next movie is a movie that I had mixed feelings on, and the more I've watched it, the more I've grown to appreciate it. And we're talking about Sponge Out of Water. Sponge on I almost called it Sponge on the Run. This movie in 3D is so cool. If you are a fan of 3D, check this out. This is another movie that was 2D, and they took the 2D animation and made it look not like this. This is obviously CGI, but the actual hand-drawn 2D animation into 3D, and it looks so freaking cool. It's a very interesting effect, and the 3D is really well done too. They have a lot of fun, a lot of pop out, very deep. But I would say that, and this movie's funny to boot. It's really well done. Don't let this cover in the marketing confuse you. This superhero stuff is the last 10 minutes of the film. It's not that much. Most of it is 2D animation, and they have a few other styles like stop motion mixed in there. This is just a wild movie. They put in everything they could possibly put. It's time travel. It's a superhero film. All kinds of crazy stuff. It's a pirate movie. It's absolutely wild. I didn't really like it at first, but the more I watched it, the more I grew to like it. And it's really cool in 3D. If you've got a 3D TV, this is one to pick up. We're going to do a threefer. So we have here the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. Well, these two are J.J. Abrams. This was Justin Lin, I believe. Yeah. And I have... It's so strange. So I hadn't seen any Star Trek when I hadn't seen the original series of Star Trek when these movies came out. I believe I saw it slightly before or right after I saw Beyond, because Leonard Nimoy passed away. It was probably before I saw Beyond. Yeah, no, it was before I saw Beyond. And after seeing the Star Trek series, I can honestly say I understand how fans were really upset. And seeing how these movies turns out, or at least these two, it is no surprise that the Star Wars sequels turned out the way they did. But we'll get into that almost literally immediately. This movie's okay. It's an okay reboot. It's a lot of fun. This movie's complete dog ass, but the 3D is really well done. Here, lots of exciting 3D, really deep, lots of fun space stuff, especially the final shot of the film when the Enterprise goes in the warp drive and the little particles come out the back, come right into your face. That sounded really wrong. Sorry. I only picked this up for the 3D if you really want that, but I picked these two up because I wanted to get this one. Star Trek Beyond is easily the best of these three movies. It is just like an original episode of Star Trek. It is very well written, it is very well paced, and the action is great. You really care about these characters, and honestly, you could probably just watch this one and be fine. These don't really follow like a chronological. I mean, they are in chronological order, but it's like you don't have to watch the other two. I mean, maybe the first Star Trek just to understand the new series, because well, actually, you would have to because it's a whole new timeline. They bring up the original Spock, and anyway, Star Trek Beyond really awesome. The climactic scene where they blast Beastie Boys over the radio and blow up all those ships is so badass. I saw it twice in IMAX 3D just for that scene. It was so cool. Beyond is definitely the best. You could probably skip out on Into Darkness. After seeing the actual Wrath of Khan and the original series, it's even worse. It makes it even worse. I can't even imagine how long diehard fans of the series must have felt. It will probably how I felt about the Star Wars sequels. And after seeing the mistakes that he made in this, he just ended up repeating them again. It's a real shame, as too, because I mean, a lot of people have voiced their concerns. Now, I know there's quite a few. Okay, so we're gonna jump into this. So, I have Star Wars: The Force Awakens and Star Wars: Rogue One. I had to get the Steelbook. This one actually, this was the only one they had left, and it was like behind a counter. Like, I got really lucky finding this one. But we'll talk about the three. This was the only way to get this one, the collector's edition. It's a big fat piece of crap, and it takes up like half the shelf. Not literally, but it's cool. I mean, it's got all this. I believe it even had a 3D digital version as well. I will say though that this movie is still very entertaining. The next two movies kind of brings the entertainment value of this down because I know where it's all going to go, and it's not particularly that great. But this movie itself is still pretty damn good. And the 3D is phenomenal. This is one of the best 3D movies I have. And I saw this in IMAX 3D, a proper IMAX theater at a museum. And there is a shot of a Star Destroyer, and it was so cool in IMAX. It literally felt like this Star Destroyer was a few inches from your face. The 3D was that well done. And I can't remember too much else about the 3D in this movie. I just know I really liked it a lot. It's really immersive. This is a really good 3D movie in general. And after that, the 3D just kind of wasn't great in Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Oh, yeah. Let me... No, wait, that's part of the same stack. Now we got Rogue One. 3D's pretty okay. Not as fun as The Force Awakens, but this is still a good movie. I think tonally this movie hits the mark pretty good. It's the right mix of serious and comedy sometimes, some brief moments of levity. There are some really weird cringe moments where they try to shoehorn in a bunch of references to A New Hope, but it's okay. The end battle sequence is pretty fun. I don't hate this as much as a lot of people do. I still think this is a pretty decent movie on its own right, and I don't know if I'd super recommend it in 3D. It's been a while, but I do remember the 3D being pretty decent. Not as good as Force Awakens, but still pretty good all the same. Interesting steelbook as well. We're finally getting to a... No, we already had a Disney movie. This is one of my favorite princess movies, one of my favorite Disney animated films, and that is Tangled. This is a really good 3D movie, and it's a fantastic movie to boot. I still love watching this movie. It's very emotional. You really get into it. I usually don't get into the whole lovey-dovey shit, but the romance done in this movie was pretty fucking good. They did it. They figured it out. They nailed it. It was good. I liked it a whole lot. This is a really nice subversion of the whole princess genre, and I highly recommend this if you love Disney. I mean, if you love Disney, you've probably already seen this movie, but this is a great movie, great animated film, and really, really good 3D. Highly recommended. Really cool. There's a shot where a whole bunch of arrows get shot at a poster, and it looks really nice.